MCUification is a term coined by me to define a phenomenon that occurred with Marvel, where all its works across various media set aside their creativity and authenticity to become mere imitations of the MCU. Why this happened in comics and animations, my focus is on games, since my channel is centered around that. Do you remember games like Spider-Man for PS1, Marvel Super Heroes or Marvel Ultimate Alliance? Then you remember the gold era of authentic hero games, which in my view spanned from 2000 to 2013. These games emerged when their basics of storytelling in other media was the comics. Consequently, everything in those games radiated the extravagance, madness and colors of the comics. It was the thing to behold, and the way they embraced their more realistic nature was incredible. Elements like Venom in Marvel vs. Capcom or their smaller proportionate characters in Ultimate Spider-Man might not mean much to you, but to me, they represent their capacity for experimentation, capitalizing on the freedom for adhering to realism. They could be as extravagant and colorful as they pleased, despite games based on movie exists at the time and those needing to follow existing plots and maintain some realism given their adaptations of live-action movies. They turned out to be hollow, uninspired productions driven solely by market to boost movie sales. The games that truly matter are the authentic ones, those that craft stories from scratch or use comic stories as their foundation, and allow themselves to be imaginative, as comics are. With the decline of movie-based games and the MCU reaching its zenith, we've transitioned from extravagant games with so much original stories to games striving realistically to emulate the MCU, whether through character design, aesthetics, or plot. One issue I criticize about the MCU is how, despite having a fantastical worlds of gods, cosmic beings, and superpowered individuals, they attempted to make everything more relatable and realistic. Characters like Hawkeye, Ant-Man, and Falcon, who sport flashy looks in comics, are given generic costumes in the movies. Even characters like Claw or the Wrecking Crew, who brought intriguing designs in the comics, are transformed into ordinary people wearing regular clothes. It seems that due to the live-action movie formats, they avoid incorporating overly fantastical, extravagant or colorful elements. It's not that they are striving for realism in a universe where a man transforms into a green monster when angry, for example, while there are movies that leverage the visual potential of Marvel Universe, such as Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness and the Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy, thanks to adept directors. Most movies fall into a pattern of being empty, devoid of color, and only concerned with minimal relatability. Unfortunately, due to MCUification, these elements have seeped into other media. A prime example is the Avengers Assemble cartoon, which replaced the incredible Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes. This show, while initially incorporating some MCU influence, gradually sheds its original ideas and evolved into a MCU cartoon with subpar animation and dark color palettes. When MCUification extended to games, it birthed the era we find ourselves in today, where many superhero games strive to mimic the MCU. The two prime examples are Marvel vs. Capcom and the LEGO games. Riding the success of X-Men in the 1990s, Capcom launched a fighting game featuring mutants, giving us X-Men Children of the Atom. This visually stunning game was likely inspired by artist Jim Lee's illustrations and loosely based off Fatal Attraction's comic arc. If you know games like Street Fighter 2 and Darkstalkers were visually appealing, this one reached aesthetic heights. I won't delve into details about other aspects like gameplay, as that's not the focus here. I want you to understand that this game embodied per comic style, which continued in Marvel Super Heroes, X-Men vs Street Fighter, Marvel vs Street Fighter, Marvel vs Capcom, and Marvel vs Capcom 2. The aesthetic evolved and became increasingly pleasing to the eye, even in Marvel vs Capcom 3, although not the first 3D entry in the Versus series, was Tatsunoko vs Capcom came earlier. It distinguished itself with cel-shaded graphics bleeding seamlessly with menus, stages, and effects. This resulted in an incredible visual experience. However, in 2017, Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite emerged, which could easily be dubbed Marvel vs. Capcom due to its lamentable quality. While the previous game thrived on comic aesthetics, the new one adopted a realistic and old style. The colorful, lively sense of the old games was replaced by a dull, lifeless look. This contrast exemplifies the difference between drawing inspiration from comics versus the MCU. The movie aesthetic is lackluster and undermines the visual potential of the movies, consequently the games could have. Moreover, following Marvel's acquisition by Disney in 2009 and its movie distribution partner since in 2012, they made one of the most foolish decisions I've witnessed. In the 1990s, Marvel faced bankruptcy, leading the rights being sold to various studios for adaptations. Thus, characters like Spider-Man were adapted by Sony, while the X-Men and Fantastic Four went to Fox. Nevertheless, they could still appear in other media like cartoons, comics, and games. Wolverine, for instance, could appear in Spider-Man cartoons. With Disney's acquisition and the rise of the MCU, an internal boycott began against characters whose films' rights were outside Disney's control. X-Men and Fantastic Four characters were sidelined across other media. As a result, these characters were absent from Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. The character rosters consisted primarily of Capcom characters. When examining the Marvel characters, most were the MCU based, such as Captain Marvel, Ultron, Gamora, and Thanos. Although some appeared in prior games, they were adapted to their cinematic counterparts here. The only character present from the movies but untouched by MCUification was Spider-Man. Yet even the game's aesthetics didn't benefit him. Before anyone comments on my video claiming my criticism should target Capcom, as I mentioned, MCUification affected all media. I gave an example in the video. If Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite adopted these aesthetics, it's likely Marvel's influence, just as the absence of X-Men is Marvel's decision. While there are other issues related to gameplay and mechanics, which are the Capcom fault. Within the broader context of aesthetics and creative potential discussed in the video, it's hard not to assign blame to Marvel. In 2013, LEGO Marvel Super Heroes was released. While I find it somewhat overrated, it was still good and featured a good aesthetic, in contrast to LEGO Batman, which aligned more with the animated series and Tim Burton's movies. LEGO Marvel felt like an homage to Marvel's varied output at the time. It combined elements from comics, cartoons, and the MCU, creating a seamless and enjoyable experience. However, in 2017, LEGO Marvel Super Heroes 2 arrived, a bizarre game that is essentially an MCU copy combined with the overrated multiverse concept. While the first game was vibrant and visually pleasing, the sequel lacked vitality. The first game included X-Men and Fantastic Four characters, while the sequel featured the Inhumans. What is Inhumans? Serious, nobody cares about the Inhuman series. Why they thought that this was a good idea? What the fuck? I don't understand this. Characters that nobody cared about or requested. Even though LEGO Marvel 2 is a sequel to the first, they seemingly didn't care to explain why Wolverine, Deadpool, and Doctor Doom disappeared from the story. They also didn't care to explain the changes in character design, which incidentally turned out terrible. Characters who initially had comic-based designs in the first game suddenly had MCU-inspired designs in the second. Spider-Man, from no apparent reason, took on Tom Holland's design within the story. They removed the unique personality from LEGO Marvel 1 and turned it into a soulless game, attempting desperately to resemble the MCU, despite already having LEGO Marvel Avengers, which recounted the movie stories, creating a LEGO Marvel Avengers 2 following Endgame to cover the entire Infinity Saga. Would have been a better excuse for a poor game with a dreadful aesthetic, rather than taking a game breathing with colors and creativity and turning it into a dull mess. In the end, all that remains is to play the old games, released old titles with genuine soul, pleasant atmosphere, and an ability to exploit their aesthetics and creative potential. I detest the games were better in the past conversation, but I can't ignore the problems of garbage we now encounter. While we once had a terrible move to game adaptation serving mere marketing purpose, today we're confronted with soulless products attempt to mimic the movies. Admittedly, the games I mentioned are bad, and not solely for this reason. Naturally, my criticism is aimed at the right culprits. If Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite regressed in mechanics, blame Capcom. If LEGO Marvel's features a terrible open world, blame TT Games. TT Games including was the developer that made Crash to Insanity, other horrible game. If the Avengers game is a lackluster online mess, blame Square Enix. Yeah, they share common problems discussed throughout this video, and the guilty part behind all this is Marvel Entertainment. Bye.